Welcome to Geoff Turck's Accounting 203 Class Excel project. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, click on the link below the video. Hey, if you click on the link, go all the way to the bottom in the other section, and you can look for this file name. Now, what are we going to do in this video? Well, we're going to look at a accounting problem from an accounting class. We're going to build a schedule of expected cash collections. And this schedule is a budget that will be based on some assumptions. So we want to talk about Excel's golden rule, because our schedule down here will be based on formulas. We're making calculations. The golden rule is this: if data in formulas can change, and what I mean by data is like your percentage of how much you collect on account or through cash, or your assumed budgeted number of sales for July. That's data in formulas. So if data in formulas can change, put it into a cell and refer to it in the formula with a cell reference. All right, now here's our problem. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll give you the details. We're going to do a budget. And for the months May to September, here are our budgeted sales. We will assume that when we have sales in a particular month, 10% will be cash, 90% will be on account. Of those on-account sales, 20% will be collected in the month of the sale, 70% in the month following, and 10% 2 months out. Now, our homework here, or this project, we're going to create a schedule of expected cash collections and calculate the accounts receivable balance at the end of the period. Then the third problem we're going to do is we're going to redo step 1 and 2 with different assumptions. Now, if you were doing this by hand, it would be terrible. You'd have to redo the schedule in step 1 and recalculation for the accounts receivable budget. But if you do it in Excel and set things up smartly, it's as simple as changing a few formula inputs and everything will update. All right. First thing is we want to take our numbers, our sales, our percentages, and put them into what's called an assumption area or a formula input area, and then we'll build our formulas. Now, when you're building an assumption area, you always want to label things smartly. So here I did percentage of sales that are cash and account. I went ahead and labeled it so I know what this 10%, this 90% means. Percentage of accounts receivable collected in the month, 1 month after, and 2 months after. Again, the idea is label everything smartly. So up here, I'm going to put the months and the budgeted sales. I'm going to put a smart label, months. Now, here's a great trick. Now, I just type that and hit Tab. I know a lot of people when they're learning, they type something and hit Enter and then bring their cursor over here and click. Forget it. If you're entering data to the right, use the Tab key. Now, I'm going to type the month May, and I'm not going to use Enter or Tab. I'm going to use Control Enter. And the reason why is I want to put this thing in the cell and keep the cell selected. So Control Enter. Notice it put May in, and the cell is still selected. Now, I immediately want to do something to that cell. There's a great feature in Excel. That little box in the lower right-hand corner is called the fill handle. This is the selection cursor. If you move your selection cursor towards that fill handle, it turns to a crosshair or an angry rabbit. You can click and drag. I'm dragging to the right, and it will automatically increment months for you. Now we want to enter a label for our budgeted sales. And I'm going to hit Tab. I'm going to type 430,000, 540,000, 600, 900,000. And finally, 500,000 for September. By the way, we're making a schedule for July, August, and September. But because we have accounts receivable, we also need information from the earlier months. All right, so always put your formula inputs and label them smartly. Now, I'm actually going to show you a little trick here. If we're given a situation where it says there's 2 categories like this, and 10% of the sales will be cash, well, the other percentage of the on-account collections guess what? We don't have to type this into a cell. We don't want to type 90% like that. We want to put a formula here. And the reason why is if we change our assumption to 15%, I want this number to automatically update. Control-Z. Now, I usually, for my own convenience and for teaching, distinguish between a formula input, meaning I'm typing that number in, and a cell with a formula. I always put a green. In my assumptions area, I always do that. So when I come back and use this later, I know, hey, these cells are all things I'm typing into the cells. This is not. This will automatically calculate. Now for reports, oftentimes you can't have that color. But up here, I'll illustrate that. Hey, this is easy. Equals, well, if 10% are a cash, the remaining amount, 90%, is on account. Well, I could go 100%, but remember that percentages are actually formatted numbers. So instead of 100%, I'm just putting 1 because that's the number that is represented by 100%. So I could say 1 minus 10%. Now, wait a second. I did that fast. I'm supposed to show you something about formulas. If I type an equal sign, that tells Excel, hey, I'm about to do a formula. Now, I can type the number 1 in the cell and then minus. And I need to get that 10% from cell B9. There's two ways I can do this. I can either click with my selection cursor, and the dancing ants will dance right around the cell. You can see the B9 is put in. You could also go equals 1 minus, and since the cell reference is close, your navigation arrow keys, and if you look wherever they are on your keyboard, if I hit the left, because I'm in edit mode and I'm making a formula, it will automatically hunt with the arrow keys for your cell references. Now, if you go too far the wrong direction, as long as the dancing ants are still dancing, just keep going until you get to the right place and then hit enter. All right, and so the beauty of that is if I type this in as a 15%. Now, I already pre-formatted this, but I got to show you something over here about percentages. In fact, I will do a little trickery here and show you teach you something about percentages down here. If I come over here, and for this is how much of the on-account sales we're going to collect in the month of the sale, 1 month after, and 2 months after. Now, the number one mistake that people make with Excel is with percentages and number format. So let's say I wanted this to be 20. If you type a 20 into a cell and come up to the home ribbon. Now, I have my home ribbons turned off so I can have a bigger screen here. You can right-click and uncollapse. There's a few other ways. There's this little item over here that will collapse. There's also a keyboard shortcut. Control F1 is a toggle. Control F1. All right, so then I come up to the number group, and I come to the drop-down, and I see a percentage. You can already see trouble here. Notice down here I typed a 20. When I apply a percentage format, it properly slides the decimal 2 places and adds that percentage symbol. So I'm going to delete that, but I want you to notice something. Deleting only removes the content. It doesn't remove the number formatting. If you have number formatting and it's bothering you, applying the general number format will wipe away all the number format. So you don't want to type a 20. If you're typing a number in first, you want to type 0.2. Now, you could type 0.2, but you could see that it put it in there for us. So it's an unnecessary keystroke. Now, 0.2, that means 20 divided by 100. That's the fraction or the decimal number that can be expressed as a percentage by applying percentage number format. Now, there's one other way you could do this. Notice I can see that this is general number format up here. Since I know that this number needs to be 70%, you can actually format as you type. So I could type 70.00. Now, right now, if I hit Enter or Control Enter or Tab, it would put the number 70 in. But as soon as I type a percentage symbol, that's you telling Excel, please apply percentage number formatting. Now, the cool thing, Control Enter, about that is guess what? I see a 70% up here and a 70% here. the number that you put in, even though you put that percentage symbol and it looks like the integer 70, the number that got put into the cell is actually what? 0.7. So if I come up here and apply the general number format, you can see that's what's there. And that number, 0.7, has to be in the cell because Excel bases all of its calculation on a number less than 1 in this case. All right, I'm going to use undo. There's also a keyboard shortcut. Keyboard shortcuts, if you hover your cursor over many of the features, they will tell you what the keyboard shortcut is. And so in this case, Control Z. Since undo is our best friend, I like that keyboard. Control Z. All right. Now, this one right here, this is 10%. Now, this one could be a formula or not. And the reason why is we might change any one of these. I'm going to assume that I'm going to change these two, and the remaining percentage for 2 months after will be the one that will be the default that just is the plug number. So I'm going to build a formula here. Equals 1 minus. Now, I need to do minus this and then minus that. But another way to go is to type the sum function. The sum function allows you to simply highlight both of those cells and close it off. Now, what is 1 minus 70% minus 20%? It's going to give us 10%. So just like that, boom. And again, the idea is if I change this, hey, wait a second, check that out. If I want to change this, notice it's already, and I can see up here percentage number format. If I just type a 10, it automatically has that percentage symbol because it's pre-formatted. If I pre-format that, I just type the 10 and Control Enter. That instantly updates. Now I'm going to Control Z. So we have our numbers. I better change this to our 10% also. All right, now let's come down to our schedule. I'm going to close this, either right-click, collapse. I can't believe there usually is something over here. I don't know why it's, oh, it's right here. Boop. So there it is. That's the one. But I'm going to use the keyboard Control F1, which is the toggle. All right, now, I've already pre-typed some stuff here. You'd have to type this. I actually do. I want to show you this. Pretend like you didn't see this, OK? I'm going to show you a few formatting things because these are important. I typed all this out, but it's a credit sales and some months. I actually want to highlight all of these labels here and indent them. So I can come up, and by the way, this ribbon, if you click on it, you can do stuff, and then it will uncollapse. I'm going to indent. It says increase indent. Then I'm going to come over to May through September, and I'm going to indent it one step further. I need a label up here, and we might need, I'm going to put schedule of expected cash collections. You might add dates or other items here, but I'm going to add just one line. I'm going to type, and then I'm going to hit Enter. Now, I want it centered across this, so I'm going to highlight all of these cells right here. Now, there is a Merge and Center button, and a lot of you use that. A lot of you might also know that there's problems with that. So I'll show you an alternative. It's fine to use Merge and Center, but an alternative is, well, we have to go to the Format Cells dialog box. Now, there's a dialog launcher at the bottom of each one of these groups. These are in the Home ribbon here. That'll open up the Format Cells to that particular tab. But the keyboard shortcut to open up Format Cells is Control 1. I'm going to go to the alignment, and the alternative is center across selection. Now, center across selection will not merge the cells, but it will look exactly the same. I'm going to click OK. All right, now another thing we're going to need down here is the total, and we're going to need to do some borders. I'm going to highlight all of those cells, and you could go up, and there's in the Home ribbon, there's some borders, but not all of the options that you might want are here. So I'm going to click Escape, Escape, and I'm going to use that same keyboard, Control 1. I'm going to go to Border. Now, you can pick any line and then draw it. You can actually use these to draw any one of the lines. There's some built-in ones up here, some presets. I'm going to select this really thick one and click. Now wait a second. How's that going to? Well, notice we have an outside all the way around, and then looks like we have some vertical lines. So anything that we were to click around the outside edge here, we'll do just the outside edge. So when I click right there, it puts it only on the top. Now I want no lines in the middle, so I'm not going to click there, but I want a double line on the bottom. So I come over here and then click on the bottom. Now it looks like I'm going to need a line here, and it looks like it's one of those little thin lines. So I'm going to click there. Boop. And I'm going to click, there's one over here that's kind of invisible. I'm going to click over there. I just don't want to click in the middle because I don't want all of these ones. This is actually a great trick for many accounting templates have, complicated border patterns. And really, this is the trick. Inside does all the inside ones. Outside does only the outside. And I click OK, and there we have it. Now that thick border, extra thick there, looks kind of funny. So I'm going to highlight it in Control 1 and use not the super thick one, but that little thin one. And I'm editing right over it. Click OK. All right, there we go. Now, we're going to need July, August, September. And I already have that information over here. And especially since this may change, I may come here and retype these later. So I'm going to build a formula that simply gets a label. I'm going to click an equal sign and click on July. Now we have to talk about two different kinds of cell references. And there's actually a bunch of kinds of cell references. But the main two that you need to know, they're called relative cell references and absolute. Now relative cell reference means if I'm in a formula, I'm always going to look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 above me and 2 to my right. So watch this. Control Enter. And I'm going to copy this. And then I'm just going to look at it real quick. I'm going to click in that cell in F2. Well, it's relative cell reference. That means relative to me, the formula, where am I always going to look? 10 up and 2 to my right. So when I copy this over, I look at it. It's a relative cell reference. Notice over here, it's D5. Here, it's E5. And here, it's F5. It's as if it's moving over as I copy my formula. In fact, it is. The cell reference is moving over. 10 up, 2 to my right. All right, so we have that, and we have quarter. We have our labels. Now, cash sales. Here, we're going to have to do a formula, a calculating formula like we did up here for a number answer. But we're going to have to learn about relative and absolute cell references. So for cash sales for July, I'm going to click on that 600,000. Now let's check this out. Control Enter. If I were to copy this over, you can see that it is a relative cell reference, right? But that's not what we want. We want 10% of those. Now here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to have to type 10% and then come over here and do times 10%. Now notice in this case, each one of these formulas needs to look at B9. So I want to avoid having to edit each one. Notice each one uses B9. Now I'm going to Control Z, Z, Z. If that's the case, meaning when you're copying your formula, you need to lock down on a particular cell reference. So when you copy it, it doesn't move. You use an absolute cell reference times B9. Now, right now, it's a relative cell reference, but hit the F4 key. It puts the secret code in $signs. The $sign in front of the B, the column reference, and the $sign in front of the number, the row reference. The number means it will not move relatively as we copy it. Control Enter and copy it over. I'm going to click in the last cell and hit F2 because I want to prove to myself that my formula is still working. And look at that, September times 10%. Now what does that do? That saves an immense amount of time when you're building budgets like this, because you don't have to type each individual formula, just one formula, and copy it over. All right, now we do have to consider credit sales and when we collect them. So May, well, we have May, June, July. This is July. So we will take our May sales. Of those sales, 90% are on account. So I'm going to use the multiplication symbol, asterisk. That would give us the all of the on account amount. But wait a second, we've already collected 2 months previously, so we take that amount and multiply it by the percentage we collect 2 months after the sale. And that will be our amount. Now this is in July, so we're done with May. Now we need to move on to June. Now June sales, we can see they're up here. We've already in the last schedule of expected cash collections accounted for what we collected in June, but we still have July and August. So we're going to start our formula, what we collected in July and August. We're going to start it in B19 equals, and we're going to click on our June. Now I'm going to copy this over, and I need it locked down on June, so I hit the F4 key, times, well, on account, so that's 90%. That also has to be locked, F4, times, this is the month after the sale, so I click on my 70%. That's a relative sale reference. So when I copy over here, it'll move to the 2 months after percentage. So Control Enter, and I copy it over. I'm clicking in the last cell and hitting the F2 key. By the way, I learned the F2 key to put it into edit mode from Geoff Turck so many years ago. Started teaching in Highline. He says, hey, you got to learn keyboard shortcuts. I love that F2. I should call it the Geoff Turck key. So there we have it. That's looking good. We have our 2 locked cell references. And boom, the 70 moved to 10. All right, now let's do July. We're going to say equals. There's our July sales. Lock it down with the F4 key. Times on account. That means right there. Well, let me hit F4. That means right there. 600,000 times 90%. That's the dollar amount for everything on account. But now we need to chop it into 3 pieces, right? July, August, September. July is this month, so that's the 20%. Whoops. 90%, F4 times, I forgot the times. And we will do our relative cell reference. All right, you ready? Control Enter and copy it all the way over to September. I'm clicking in the last cell and hitting the Geoff Turck key, F2. And boom, there it is. The full amount for on account for July, 600,000 times 90% times the 10%. That's the amount we're going to collect in September. Working perfectly. Now in August, we have to start in August. Equals August, F4 times 90%, F4 times, this is the 20%. This is in the month we're collecting. That's a relative. These two are absolute. Control Enter and copy it over. I'm going to click in that cell and hit the F2 key. All right, finally we have September. We don't need to worry about cell references because we're not copying this, just this 1 month. 500K times on account times the month that we the month of the sale, 20%. All right, so now we've made all of our calculations. We need to add for each one of the months the totals, and then for the quarter. Now I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to use the sum function equals SUM. Now, a great thing in 2007 or later, anytime your function that you want from your drop-down, notice these are all the S's, is in blue, I can simply hit Tab. Now I'm going to highlight with my dancing ants there. Relative cell references, those are please add all the ones above me. Control Enter, and then copy it over. Come over here. Equals, actually, let me show you a great trick here. If you have a bunch of numbers directly next to where you want your formula or above, you can come to Home, and there's the Sum button. That's what most people do. But check out, if you hover over the Sum button, it tells you what the keyboard is, Alt equals. Now, Alt equals, there are over 400 functions, and Sum function is the only one that has a keyboard. So let me try it. Alt equals. And just like that, you got to be careful when you use Alt equals or the Sum button or the functions dialog box. Make sure that the dancing ants are going around the correct numbers, because sometimes it doesn't get it right. Here it does. It's please add up the 3 to my left. Control Enter. And I'm going to copy it down. Now I'm going to check this out just to test it. Now that I have my schedule of expected cash collections, I'm going to change this number here to 20. pre-formatted so that percentage shows up. And before I hit enter, this is going to change, and everything in the schedule will change. Boom. Absolutely beautiful. Control Z. Now, our next task is to calculate the amount that we should have in AR on September 30th. Still to be collected, some in August and some in September. Now, I'm going to just do some basic subtraction here. I know in August, I need to see this number up here. There's my total from August right there. But I've already collected 90 in cash sales, and from right here, 729 in AR sales. So I'm going to just do simple subtraction. Take the total on for August of all the budgeted sales minus the cash sales we've already collected minus the total AR we've already collected, assumed to collect, and boom. So we have 81,000. I can do the same thing for September. There is the September total minus the cash amount minus, and there's only one 90,000, the 10% of, or the 20% in the month of the sale of AR. So there we go. We can do those straight calculations. And so the balance will be that amount there. Alt equals enter. And that will give us our budgeted balance sheet accounts receivable balance on September 30th. Wow, that would be a big number there. It's actually 2013. Hey, you know, when I'm doing calculations like this, I like to double check. And I'm going to scroll down here and think of some different ways to kind of calculate these two and maybe a few other numbers just to see if I'm on track. So maybe AR in August and AR in September. See if we get the same numbers here. Up here, we subtracted. Well, we can do this calculation a different way by doing our multiplication, because it's AR with our 90%, then whatever percentage is here. So I'm going to come down here, and for August, I'm going to say equals. Well, for August, we've already collected 2 bits, and we still have this 10% we haven't. So I'm going to come up and get August. That's all of the budgeted sales times the 90% we sell on account. That'll give us the whole amount. We just need to multiply that times 10%. Right? And so we get 81. Now, September, a little bit trickier formula here, and I'm going to try and do it all in one cell. You could certainly do it in 2 cells, because what? There's we've only collected the 20% of the 90% for AR. We still have the 70 and the 10%. I'm going to go ahead and say equals September, that's the whole amount, times this 90%. Now notice I had to scroll up. There's our formula. Well, I'm going to use my scroll bar over here. We still have the 70 and the 10. Well, now we could do this a few ways. I'm going to just go like this. Now I need, that's just the amount for 1 month after, plus, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go like this. And then I'm going to multiply it times the 10. Now, that little bit right there is going to give us what we calculate 2 months out. And that little bit will give us what we collect 2 months out, collect 1 month after the sale. There's still another way we could do that too. I could get the 500K times the 90%. You know, we could add those together and just do one. So I could use the sum function and then add these two. Because I have the full amount right here. That's the full amount. And it's going to be one piece is 70% and the other piece is 10%. So I can simply add the percentage together. What would I get? I would get 80%. So there's a bunch of ways we could do that. Now let's go ahead and Alt equals. And so it looks like we're on track there. Now, what about for July, August, and September? You know what? I want to see if I can calculate from all my calculated numbers and get the totals for each one of these. Here, watch this. I'm going to do a trick here because I would like to see what's happening down here and up here. I'm going to select the row header 7 and click and drag all the way to 13, and then I'm going to right click hide. Notice there's an unhide too, so I'm going to hide. All right, so here we go. For July, my target number is 600,000. All right, you ready? Equals, well, July cash sales plus all of the July AR, and that would be it, right? 600,000, absolutely on target. How about for August? Well, in August, we collected 90,000 in cash plus, oh yeah, this AR plus the amount we just calculated for leftover in AR after this period here. OK, 900,000. So there we go. Again, the idea is if I'm in charge of the spreadsheet, I'm checking. I did all these calculations, and I was careful, but I'm doing it a different way to make sure. All right, how about September? I could say, hey, 500K plus, well, we collected a little bit of cash, a little bit of AR here, and then there's a bunch of AR left over. So those are all the pieces. Ooh, not right. What did I do wrong there? Right there. So there we go. So those are the pieces there. So the cash, the AR collected during this schedule, and then the AR left over after the schedule. So 500,000. All right, we need to go up and unhide. So I'm going to click on the row header 6 and drag all the way to 14, and then right click unhide. All right, we still have 2 things left to do. We want to do some page setup, because right now if we printed this, it would print across all the stuff we don't want. And then we're going to copy the sheet over and change the assumptions. Now, let's just go ahead and take a look at what happens when we use Control P for print. You could also go to File, Print. But Control P is a lot different in Excel 2010 and Excel 2013, which I'm using. They force you to look at Print Preview, which of course is awesome, because what do we all do in the old days? Click print, it would print across pages, not what we wanted. Then we'd have to come back and do page setup. So this is nice, a nice improvement. It forces you to look at print preview. I'm going to click escape. The first thing we want to do is set the print area. We have a bunch of calculations down here and all this other stuff we don't want to print out with our report. And I actually am going to include my assumptions. So I'm going to highlight just the assumptions, the schedule, and the budgeted balance sheet calculation here, and go up to Page Layout and Set Print Area. Only that area will print out. The rest of the stuff will not. Let's Control P. Oh, very nice. But we still have to do page setup. The September is cut off the edge. I'm going to click Escape. Page setup, we go to page layout. Now there's a bunch of buttons that would help us do page setup, but every time it opens a dialog box. So I like to go straight to the dialog box. Page setup group. This is called a dialog launcher. I click, and there we have our page setup. Now I'm going to select landscape. This is if it is wider than it's tall, then usually landscape looks better. This is almost exactly the same dimension both ways, but I'm going to select landscape. Come over to margins. Usually it looks good to select horizontal. Vertically looks funny, especially if the report is small. Header and footer. Now, one thing we're going to do is we're going to have one sheet and then a second sheet with a second set of assumptions. So watch this. There's custom footer and custom header. This is the preview up here for header. This is the preview for footer. But there's some built-in ones. And one great built-in header or footer, in this case a footer, is page 1 of question mark. That means it'll say 1 of 2, 2 of 2 when we have 2 pages. Now the custom header, footer, built-in footers, there's the preview of the footer. Custom header, I don't see anything up here. I'm going to build this from scratch. Now, one thing nice about this custom footer dialog box is we can type whatever we want up here. So I could type accounting homework and then your name. You could type something in the middle or in the right section. And there's a bunch of great buttons. That's actual page number, total page numbers, date, time, workbook name, and even sheet tab name. So I'm going to put sheet tab name here because I'm going to change this. Well, this says schedule of expected cash collections, set 1. When we copy the sheet over, we'll set it to set 2, and this will update perfectly. I'm going to click OK. One more tab here. I'm going to click Sheet. We don't really need anything here, but notice that's where the print area got set. I'm going to click OK. Now let's do Control P, and there's our preview. You know, I'm kind of looking here. I like this preview. I see that I have some extra room on each side and below, so I'm going to increase the percentage. Actually, Control P, this page setup link will jump us right to that dialog box. I'm just going to try 120. Click OK. I was just guessing there, but look, I see page 1 of 1. This is looking great. All right. I'm going to click Escape. It's set there. When we print it from now on, it will print. Now, the next thing is to copy the sheet over and change the assumptions. I'm going to go ahead and change the name of the sheet, schedule of expected cash collections, set, and I'm going to actually highlight this. And here's a cool trick. If you put a number in parentheses, anytime you copy the sheet, the number will increment. I'm going to change that sheet tab name, which is the name of this worksheet, hit Enter. And now I want to copy this. Right-click, move, or copy. Now, it'll ask you before which sheet. I want it to move to end. And look at this. By default, if I clicked OK, it would move it and would do nothing because there's no other sheets here. Be sure to check Create a Copy. Another great way to do that, and this is kind of hard, but check this out. You hold the Control key. And with the Control key selected, I'm going to click on the sheet with my mouse and drag up. Notice that piece of paper and the plus symbol. Notice that black triangle pointing down. That black triangle is pointing to where it will drop. Now, the trick is you have to let go of your mouse, but not Control. So I'm letting go of the mouse. That is much faster for copying, and that's a good way. Now we can have 3 sets. And when we print the thing out, it'll say page 1 of 2. 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3. And these sheet tab names will show up when we print. All right, now let's go to set 2. The homework says 15 and 85%, so check this out. For cash collections, we're going to assume we get 15%. And just like that, the 85 updates, so does everything here. That's why we got to know how to do Excel, why accountants must know Excel, and illustrates the power of Excel's golden rule. Right? Everything down here was partially based on that 15%, so when we changed it, it all updated. All right, and the other assumption was 30% on account and 65% in the second month. So I'm going to do 30, tab, and 65. Notice the pre-formatting, so I just typed 65. Absolutely beautiful. Now I'm going to come over here. The homework didn't say it, but I'm going to just mess around here. I'm going to say 12%. This one's actually 15% and 50%. So we have our sets of assumptions. Now let's Control P. And I'm going to come and say, please select entire workbook. And now look, it says page 1 of 3. I can see my page 1 of 3 there. Up here it has my sheet tab name. When I click forward, page 2 of 3, there's my sheet tab name, etc. All right, I'm not going to click Print. I'm going to click Escape. One other thing, if you wanted to just print set 1 and 2, you click on this sheet and then hold Shift and click on this sheet. Now when you Control P, the default is print active worksheets. That's what comes up there. And so now you can see it's print 1 of 2. You could also say the pages here. Now one thing that's dangerous, I'm going to click Escape. These are simultaneously selected, and if I start doing anything, it does it to both sheets. So be sure to right-click Ungroup, or if there's another sheet, click on it, and it will deselect them. All right, that was a lot about the power and beauty of Excel, an illustration of Excel's golden rule, which means Anytime you have formula inputs that can change, including something like this 90% that doesn't seem like it will change, don't type it in the cell. Create a formula based on formula inputs. All right, we'll see you next video.